Happy Kraken Day, everybody, and what better way to celebrate than with another Seattle Kraken win? Though it would be nice if they could not make it quite so interesting every single time, but I'm not going to complain about 2 more points in the standings. What's Kraken, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, and the second Kraken win in a row as they make it interesting again, but get the job done as well again in Detroit, winning it 5-4 in OT. So there were a lot of similarities between the game in St. Louis and this one in Detroit, in that the team overcame some issues that they had out on the ice to end up coming away with the result that they needed, which was 2 points in the standings. And now with 4 points already in this road trip, which I kind of felt like was the minimum that they needed to come away from these 4 games with, ultimately really 5 points was, I think, the least that I would have felt good about. But they're at least at 4 now, and a good chance to pick up 2 more tomorrow in Columbus, or today when you're watching this. Of course, this 4-game road trip will finish off in Colorado against an Avalanche team that's finally playing like the team that everyone expected to see, making that run to defend their title, which will definitely be a tough out. Not that the Kraken haven't played teams playing just as well, if not better, on the road and won those games, so still definitely a game the Kraken can win, but they'll absolutely have to be at their best. Whereas with the first 3 games in this road trip, and specifically the one in St. Louis and this next one against Columbus, those are games that they really needed to come away with at least points in, if not wins. And really the only one that I thought maybe the one overtime or shootout point would be acceptable was this one in Detroit against a Red Wings team that is still in the playoff hunt themselves. Though with that being said, like the Blues, who the Kraken just played, Detroit is selling at the deadline, or at least got rid of a couple of pieces right before Seattle rolled into town. So then, with that being said, I suppose it would make sense that the Kraken would keep the same lineup for this game against Detroit as the one that just went into St. Louis and beat the Blues, after they've been selling off players as well, faster than just about any team in the NHL. And to start off, it seemed like it was working, as actually, unlike that game in St. Louis, the Kraken actually got off to a very good start. After a few seconds in, Gord has a fight with an old teammate in Adam Ernie. The Kraken get on the board first, just past the first minute, as it's a pretty nice passing play started by Beniers as he whips around, gets a pass to Eberle. Eberle whips around, gets it somehow through everybody and across the crease to McCann, who's wide open on the other side, and McCann quickly puts it in from a tight angle to give the Kraken the 1-0 lead. And also, with the goal being Jared McCann's 28th on the season, it sets a new Kraken franchise record for goals in a single season by a single player, as McCann beats his own record of 27, set, well, obviously a year ago. Unfortunately, though, for the Kraken, again, in contrast to that last game against the Blues, the one player that didn't seem like they were starting on time in this game was the same player that was the only guy that seemed to be starting on time in the last one, and that's Martin Jones, as just past the 3-minute mark, a little bit less than 2 minutes later, the Red Wings would finally get their first shot on goal, and it would come on a rush chance, but it's a 2-on-2 rush chance, and Dunn does force the shot from well outside, and it's a contested shot at that, but it still beats Jones clean through a hole between his blocker and pad to tie the game at 1, and this is absolutely one that he just needs to come up with a save on. But you know what? That's alright, it's just 1 goal after all, and Jones does make the next few saves, and besides, the Kraken are going to get the lead back shortly after this. Just 2.5 minutes later, or a little bit less than that, it's Bjorkstrand into the offensive end on a 2-on-2, somewhat partial odd man chance the other way. Bjorkstrand fires off the shot again from pretty well out, gets the rebound to go out to the other side off the pad of Husso, right out to Wennberg, who collects it, and it's Wennberg, so you know he's passing and not taking the shot. But in this case, that was absolutely the right call, as Bjorkstrand's able to get out in front of the net with his stick on the ice, as Olimata just kind of coasts past him inexplicably. But Bjorkstrand does the right thing, stick on the ice, Wennberg finds that stick, goes off of it, into the back of the net, to give the Kraken the 2-1 lead, giving Bjorkstrand the goal. And so at just 5.5 minutes into the game, there's already been 3 goals, as this is starting to seem like it could turn into a track meet, even if the better chances have definitely been in the Kraken offensive end on the Detroit net, and like we already said, the one that ended up going to the Kraken net was kind of just a soft one that Jones lets in. Either way, the Kraken have the lead, and things do kind of calm down at this point, really throughout the rest of the first period, and play does even out, even through a couple of power plays or a couple of penalties called, as there's a Detroit power play that's cut short by a penalty called on, I think it was interference on Gord behind the net. Either way, that gets cut short, so we get 4-on-4 for a minute, which doesn't go anywhere. Then the Kraken get a power play, which they get some, well, at least get set up in the offensive end, but don't really get any shots off. Right up until, as the power play ends, just like happened in the last game, it's McCann with a one last pass around the horn, starting from Tolvanen up to Dunn, down to McCann. McCann just winds up, fires off the shot as the guy gets across the blue line, and it goes into the net to give the Kraken the 3-1 lead. So over these last two games, the power play numbers might not be getting better, but this is basically, like we said in the last one, a power play goal, even if technically it goes even strength, as that fifth guy for the opposing team just barely got out on the ice before McCann, on pretty much an identical play, scores again. And of course, yes, also for those that aren't interested in doing the math, does increase that franchise record from 28 to 29, which is also increasing his personal best for goals in a season. Plus, now with still about 8 minutes left in the first period, it puts him on hat trick watch and a chance for 30 on the season, which he would just barely end up missing right as the horn goes to end this first period. However, it did not end great for the Kraken, not only because McCann doesn't end up getting the hat trick in this first period, or spoiler alert, throughout the rest of the game, but also because this first period ends not 3-1, but 3-2. As with just a couple minutes left in the first period, Detroit gets into the offensive end and gets set up on a delayed penalty, so it's 6-on-5 with their net empty. And on that 6-on-5, a shot comes from right down the middle, starting up at the blue line, so it's pretty far from outside. And it gets through everyone right into the back of the Kraken net to get that 3-2 score. And although this is another shot from the outside, this one is not on Jones. This is just a screen that's allowed to get set up in front of the Kraken net, right in front of Jones, that doesn't allow him to see this shot come, where the Kraken just let Adam Ernie stand there and prevent Jones from getting line of sight. And of course, Seider, being the rookie of the year from last year, takes an advantage of that, sees that Jones is having to lead to one side to get around Ernie. He puts it on the other side, and they score. And to make matters worse, although the Kraken did have that last second push that McCann nearly scored on at the end of the first, Detroit uses this goal to carry momentum into the start of the second, where just a couple minutes in, they tie the game at 3. And again, this is one that's kind of, I think, mostly on Jones. Sure, it's not perfect defense from the Kraken, as players just allowed to sneak up on 3 Kraken defenders and get this shot off the pass, but Jones slides way too far out of the net, expecting maybe, I guess, a shot from a tight angle from the guy with the puck, but instead he sees Jones come way too far out of the net, which is kind of weird to see from Jones. Sort of his thing has been that he is pretty at home and calm and doesn't move around too much. The aggressive towards the puck goaltender between the two is definitely more a Grubauer thing, but Jones is, even for being an aggressive attacking the puck type of goaltender, which he isn't, is too much that here. The pass does get up, and although Dunn almost gets a stick, I think it was Dunn anyway, almost gets a stick to deflect the shot, the net's pretty much empty to shoot at, and it goes straight into it to tie the game up. At which point, and honestly, Jones really seemed like he wasn't seeing the puck all that well tonight, there is a pretty aggressive, I would say, goaltender pull here by Hackstall to switch to Grubauer as this third one goes in. Now, I say it's an aggressive goaltender pull, not because I think it's Hackstall sending a loud message to Jones that he's just not good enough. I mean, he definitely wasn't good enough on this specific night, so it was absolutely the right call for Hackstall to make. But I think it was more just a sign of how necessary the Kraken needed to get these 2 points, and a clear recognition that this wasn't going to be Jones's night. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to come to Jones' defense, because let's face it, he is a large part of the reason the Kraken are where they're at this point in the season, in a good chance for a playoff spot. But it also has been 4 pretty soft goals he's allowed in the last 2 games, and Grubauer has just straight up looked better. Again, that's no comment necessarily on what Jones has done for the Kraken, as he's been the best goaltender the Kraken have had for the majority of this season. But at the moment, Grubauer is certainly playing better of the 2. Now, it doesn't mean that Jones can't be an option the rest of the way. In fact, personally, I'd still like to see a 1A, 1B type of tandem between the 2, with probably Grubauer getting the majority of the starts, but I wouldn't be too opposed to them kind of just riding the hot hand like they have been of late. Maybe not quite to the point of riding one guy until he gets burned out and then in an emergency going to the other, but figuring something out. Plus, as far as organizational recognition for what Jones has done for the team so far this season, well, I think the fact that he's still a part of the team and that the Kraken felt like they could do what they did with Drieger and sending him down to the AHL to get his hockey legs back under him after being out for 9 months recovering from his injury is a sign that they trust Jones enough to probably be with the team the rest of the season, and they'll probably need both Jones and Grubauer come playoff time, assuming they do end up making it there. Anyway, all of that is to say that I don't see this as a reflection on Jones as a whole, really just that even beyond what happened last game, it was pretty clear that everyone has off games, and this was clearly one of Jones, as even outside of the fact that he allows 3 goals in on the first 12 shots, and usually I would think this would be a pretty early point to pull a goaltender, it was pretty clear that he wasn't seeing the puck all that well, and again, these are 2 points that the Kraken desperately need at this point in the season. Of course, that does also leave the problem now with Grubauer and net that for whatever indiscernible reason, as we've mentioned over the last month a few times, the Kraken just don't seem to be able to score goals at the same rate when Grubauer's in net as when Jones is. But at least they're going to get a power play just after he comes in, which for the second time this game, even though this is a full 2-minute power play rather than the 1 minute they had before after the 4-on-4, they aren't able to score on it. But also, for the second time in the game, and third time now in the last 2, just as the power play comes to an end and that 5th guy gets out on the ice to make it even strength, before he can get across the blue line and into the play, the Kraken actually end up scoring on a play that's pretty similar to how they get their first one, as Beniers fires off a shot on a crossing pass that goes off the side of the net, but rebounds back to him. He collects it, whips 180, and gets a beautiful pass to Eberle just next to the net. Eberle himself goes 180 with the puck, and then somehow, some way, even more incredible than his previous pass to set up McCann for the goal, magicians this puck through a couple of Red Wings defenders and through the crease to this time Schwartz on the other side, who puts it over the pad of Husso and gives the Kraken back the lead. It's now 4-3. So apparently to the Kraken, at least lately anyway, the best part of being on the power play is when it ends, because that's when they get their best chances. However, as you probably could have guessed from the final score and the fact that this went to overtime, it's another lead for the Kraken that would not last. I mean, it lasts a few more minutes and through another Detroit Red Wings power play, but eventually the Kraken pretty much leave Grubauer out to dry, not only because they only score this 1 goal in front of him, but also in the final minutes, or with about 5 minutes left in the second period, similar to what happened to Jones on the second goal that really wasn't his fault, though this one's at 5-on-5 rather than 6-on-5 on a delayed penalty. Another player's just allowed to stand uncontested in front of Grubauer as he kind of sneaks up behind Borgen, but Borgen, after noticing him, doesn't go to try and push him out from in front of that screen, so Grubauer's left leaning to one side, and sure enough, as soon as that's picked up, the shot goes right to the other side and into the back of the Kraken net to tie the game at 4. Of course, it also certainly doesn't help, especially optically anyway, that right before Wallman ends up scoring this shot from, again, well outside, he does fake a shot that makes Schwartz dive down to try and block the shot, and then Wallman decides not to shoot it, instead pulling it back to take the second and real shot. Meanwhile, Schwartz just kind of slides pirouetting in front of him, harmlessly out of the way. Then Wallman takes the second shot, which another Kraken player, I think it was Donato, tries to get in front of it, but slides a little late. Either way, the big problem here is that for the second time in the game, the Kraken just allow another Red Wings player to stand uncontested in front of Grubauer, completely screening him and not really giving him any chance to make this save. Something that he would actually manage to fight through by himself later on in the game to make another save on the short side. But this has kind of been a problem here for the Kraken over these last couple of games. In fact, the game against Toronto, net front presence in front of their own net was a big issue for the Kraken, as a lot of those chances and goals for the Maple Leafs came on second chances right out in front of the net. Now, in this game against the Red Wings, it wasn't second chances that were costing the Kraken. It was just that those screens were allowing the first chances to not give their goaltender a chance. Although, even with that being said, Detroit did get one grade A+ scoring opportunity on a second chance towards the end of the second period that could have easily given them the 5-4 lead. And in fact, they had Grubauer dead to rights as a guy was once again left kind of all alone in front of the Kraken net, gets a second opportunity and has Grubauer again completely beat, and just has to basically shove the puck into the corner of the net past Grubauer, who's out of the net having made the previous save. But Grubauer is able to, in desperation, dive back with his paddle and get the heel of the paddle on it, making the spectacular, potentially save of the year for the Kraken. And as would turn out, it would be an even more important save than it even seemed like, with the game tied here at the end of the second. The Kraken do get that power play, which they not only don't score on, but also don't score on the final seconds of it, or few seconds right after it at the start of the third period. In fact, nobody scores in the third period, so we do end up getting to overtime. And finally, in overtime, although both teams combined went 0 for 7 on the power play in regulation, the Red Wings going 0 for 3, the Kraken going 0 for 4, even if they do score the 2 just seconds after power plays ended. The Kraken will get a power play during this overtime with about 3 minutes left, and in the final seconds of that power play, so they don't even have to wait for the guy to get out of the box, as they get one final chance with Bjorkstrand and McCann switching sides. Bjorkstrand now with the puck on the left side from the Kraken point of view of the offensive end, eyes down McCann on the far side as it looks like he's going to go for that crossing pass to try and get McCann the shot. But instead, I don't know if it was a no-look shot, but he certainly caught just about everybody on the ice by surprise when he fires off the shot and scores to win the game in overtime for the Kraken on the power play, giving them finally a power play goal as they end up going 1 for 5, and another overtime win as the Kraken still have not lost in overtime. They've lost a couple times in the shootout, but haven't lost in overtime since starting the season 0 for 3 in that area. So in the end, well, sure, you can probably argue the Kraken probably should have won that game in regulation, given that the Red Wings are already selling players off and the Kraken are really in need of those 2 points, even outside of the fact that their goaltender let in a couple easy ones early on, and then they had some sloppy play in the defensive end. Either way, they end up coming out of it with the 2 points and a chance to pick up 2 more and get this win streak to 3 games against, well, Detroit's at least a team that's in the hunt for the playoffs, even if they've made a couple of trades. The Blue Jackets are, the only thing they're in the hunt for is the best odds at the first overall pick and Connor Bedard. Now, I'm not going to lie, I am a little bit nervous for this game coming up against the Blue Jackets. Again, probably today as of when you're watching this, not just because I'll be streaming for the game, which if it doesn't go well for the Kraken, then would be a pretty not fun stream to be doing, or even because it's the second half of a back-to-back on the day of the trade deadline, but also because we have seen the Kraken play down to some opponents. And if they do lose this game, it not only then forfeits 2 points that should be basically free to the team, but also because even outside of the Kraken getting those 2 points, this is a team in the Blue Jackets the Kraken could really use not having those 2 points, as they would like to see the Blue Jackets and help them get there closer to that best odds at the first overall pick and beating Anaheim to that punch. As again, we do not want Connor Bedard in division. That having been said, even if the Kraken do play the way they have in these last 2 games, which is still far from perfect and far from their best hockey, even that they've played at consistent points during the course of this season, they should still be able to and probably still will win this game, even with some of the issues they've had in these last couple that we'd like to see them clean up, especially against a team they should be able to make those improvements against. And in that vein, the big takeaways from this game, again, as we talked about during the recap, is certainly not allowing opposing net front pressure in front of the Kraken net, and certainly not allowing uncontested net front pressure or presence in front of the Kraken net, as the Kraken really, especially when they were playing well and going on those winning streaks earlier on in the season in November and January, they were doing an incredible job in their defensive end of not allowing strong opposing presence really in the dangerous areas of the ice, in the front of the net, or even in the crease in general. However, of late, as we saw against, well, especially against Toronto, but even against Boston some, and in this game, although it didn't cost them in the same way it did in those games, that net front presence, if it's left unchecked, has all sorts of different ways of turning out with the puck in the back of the Kraken net. Meanwhile, at the other end of the ice, it kind of seems like the main takeaway from this game is just make sure Jared McCann shoots the puck, and shoots the puck a lot, as he is absolutely riding the hottest stick on the team really over the course of this entire season, as he not only has an very high shooting percentage, higher than your normal player, but also in goals per 60, as he doesn't have quite the ice time of your other NHL superstars around the league. But goals per 60 minutes out on the ice, he is 5th best in the NHL overall and 2nd best in the NHL in goals per 60 at even strength. So yeah, I think it goes without saying that myself and Kraken fans everywhere would be more than happy with just turning the opposing offensive ends into the Jared McCann shooting gallery, which neatly transitions us into the 3 stars of the game for the Kraken. The first star being Jared McCann himself with goals 28 and 29 of the season. As we already mentioned, that setting and breaking his previous record of goals in a season for a Kraken player from last season, where he had 27, now already at 29, and looking for his first 30-goal season in his career. And since McCann, at least to me anyway, is pretty obviously the first star for the Kraken in this game, with not just those 2 goals, but also an assist on top of it, that makes the second star also pretty obvious. It's the only other guy with 2 goals, that being Oliver Bjorkstrand, who now gets to ride a strong game with those 2 goals and the game winner into his return home to where he played, well, his entire career up until this season, in Columbus against the Blue Jackets in his revenge game. And who knows, maybe he can come away with 1 more goal than he had in this game in that one. But then with the third star, there are a few options. Of course, there's a pair of guys who had a pair of assists, but there's also plenty of guys who had great games, even some that didn't get on the score sheet. But I am going to go with one of those 2 players with the 2 assists who both picked up those 2 assists on the same 2 goals. I'm going to go with the one of the 2 being, those 2 being Beniers and Eberle, that got the primary assists, and just incredible primary assists at that on both of the goals. That being Jordan Eberle, who also with the 2 assists, speaking of franchise records, is now just 1 point shy of tying McCann's record from last year of points in a season for the Kraken, as he's sitting on 49, leading the team at the moment. So who knows, if Eberle can pick up a couple more points in Columbus, we could end up seeing 2 franchise records fall in back-to-back nights. Of course, as far as the assists in a single season record is concerned, that already fell long ago, as both Eberle and actually Dunn are well past the previous record of 28 from last season, Eberle sitting on 36 and Dunn on 34. Meanwhile, Gord is about to pass it himself on 28. But with all that having been said, since I still do have to get this video edited and then get it out before the game starts and the stream starts in that game against Columbus, as always, let me know down in the comment section what you guys thought of this game, who your 3 stars would be, and any improvements the Kraken could make, or just how excited we are that they're once again in the top 3 in the division, jumping Edmonton again as they tie them in points, but pass them in points percentage. Anyway, until we hopefully see you for that stream, otherwise the R&R afterwards, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoyed this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below to support the channel. Again, hope to see you for the stream, but until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken!